Andrew Carnegie was an American industrialist who amassed a fortune in the steel industry and became a major philanthropist. He fits in with the industry, labor, and immigration sub-era. Carnegie's life was a rags to riches story, as he was born with decent circumstances on November 25, 1835 in Dunfermline, Scotland. In search of better economic opportunities, the Carnegie family moved to America and settled in Allegheny City, Pennsylvania. This would be the start of his impact in the American industrial movement. Carnegie was not involved in farming, so he did not have an opinion on the farmers' problems. However, he would have liked the business that the planters gave him because they needed to export their products, and to do that, they needed railroads. Therefore, they needed more steel to make those railroads, which helped Carnegie make more money. Carnegie was largely responsible for the great advances in steel production. Before he was 30 years old, he had made shrewd and far-sighted investments, which by 1865 were concentrated in iron. Within a few years, he had organized or had stock in companies making iron bridges, rails, and locomotives. 10 years later, the steel mill he built on the Monongahela River in Pennsylvania was the largest in the country. His business, allied with a dozen others, could command favorable terms from railroads and shipping lines. Nothing comparable in industrial growth had ever been seen in America before. Though Carnegie long dominated the industry, he never achieved a complete monopoly over the natural resources, transportation, and industrial plants involved in the making of steel. In the 1890s, new companies challenged his preeminence, and at first, stung by competition, Carnegie threatened to build an even more powerful business complex. But now, a tired old man, he was persuaded to merge his holdings with an organization that eventually would embrace most of the important iron and steel properties in the nation. In 1901, banker J.P. Morgan purchased Carnegie Steel Corporation for some $480 million, making Andrew Carnegie one of the world's richest men. That same year, Morgan merged Carnegie Steel Corporation with a group of other steel businesses to form U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar corporation. In 1892, the Carnegie Steel Corporation tried to lower wages at a Carnegie steel plant in Homestead, Pennsylvania. The employees disagreed. They refused to work, starting what has been called the Homestead Strike of 1892. The conflict between the workers and local managers turned violent after the managers called in guards to break up the union. While Carnegie was away at the time of the strike, many still held him accountable for his managers' actions. Carnegie was not considered to be a robber baron. As an immigrant, his story of hard work and dedication showed others how far it can take you. He was a key factor in the steel industry and revolutionized steel production in the United States. Being a wealthy man, he was smart and knew how to handle his money, making him a captain of industry.
Carnegie, as an immigrant himself from Scotland, hired many immigrants and other minorities who had good work ethics to work in his steel factories. His Carnegie Steel Company has employed over 20,000 people and had become the world's largest industrial corporation. Carnegie's ruthlessness and ignorance when it came to thousands of poor laborers who made his wealth possible led to Carnegie being known as the man who was an insightful and a kind philanthropist, but also played to win at all costs. Carnegie was called the world's richest man, but he was careful to deflect criticism by focusing on his philanthropic and educational activities. He gave away over $350 million during his lifetime, which would equal billions in today's dollars. While he had begun his philanthropic works years earlier by building libraries and making donations, Carnegie expanded his efforts in the early 20th century. Carnegie used his philanthropic funds to support his favorite HBCU, Tuskegee and Hampton universities. Carnegie went on to create the Carnegie Trust for the Universities of Scotland, which covered tuition for any student in financial need. He was an avid reader for much of his life and donated approximately $5 million to the New York Public Library so that library could open several branches in 1901. Also, he established the Carnegie Institute of Technology in Pittsburgh, which is now known as Carnegie Mellon University. With his strong interest to peace, he formed the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in 1910. His 1889 article, Wealth, outlined his view that those with great wealth must be socially responsible and use their assets to help others. This was later published as the book The Gospel of the Wealth in 1900. Also, Carnegie felt that he would have a much greater impact on small colleges' existence with his investment and donations. Carnegie believed deeply in the cause of blacks' education and saw slavery as blight on the country's triumphant democracy. Further, he believed that blacks would benefit from the support of northern white philanthropists like himself. Carnegie was not very involved with governments. However, he gained much goodwill in 1898 when he offered $20 million to the government of the Philippines. He was an opponent of the American acquisition of the islands and hoped the Filipinos could purchase their independence. However, their efforts came of nothing. Carnegie believed in giving back and making sure that everyone had the opportunity of education. Him being one of the most successful businessmen and most recognized philanthropists in history, and with his entrepreneurial ventures in America's steel industry earning him millions, he in turn made great contributions to social causes such as public libraries, education, and international peace. He donated millions of dollars to funding new libraries and schools in order to fulfill his goal. He also founded the Carnegie Institution to fund scientific research, and he also established a pension fund for teachers with a $10 million donation. Showing his great gratitude towards teachers and the importance of education, Carnegie was able to accomplish the final and, to his mind, most important goal he had set for himself. He entrusted his wife about $26 million, but left his daughter nothing, having noted on numerous occasions that he cared not to burden her with wealth. The primary source, The Gospel of Wealth, is an article written by Andrew Carnegie in June of 1889. That describes the responsibility of philanthropy by the new upper class of self-made rich. Carnegie proposed that the best way of dealing with the new phenomenon of wealth inequality was for the wealthy to utilize their surplus means in a responsible and thoughtful manner. This approach was contrasted with an idea where wealth is handed down to people in need. Carnegie argued that surplus wealth is put to best use when it is distributed carefully by the wealthy. Carnegie also argues against wasteful use of money in the form of extravagance, irresponsible spending, or self-indulgence, instead promoting the idea that money should be distributed over the course of their lifetime toward the cause of reducing the difference between the rich and poor. And as Andrew Carnegie once said, the wealthy should administer their riches responsibly and not in a way that encourages the slothful and drunken and the unworthy.